Hi, name is Lam. Today I read the story The Secret Garden.
Is Born Young Reading Series 2. The Secret Garden. Chapter 1. Contrary Mary.
Chapter 1. Contrary Mary.
In the scorching heat of a garden in India,
In the scorching heat of a garden in India,
Mary Lennox stamped her foot.
Mary Lennox stamped her foot.
"Fetch me a drink now,"
Fetch me a drink now,
she ordered.
she ordered.
Instantly, servants rushed to obey.
Instantly, servant rushed to obey.
Meanwhile, Mary began to make a pretend garden,
Mary began to make a pretend garden,
sticking flowers into the hot, dry earth.
sticking flower into the hot, dry earth.
"It looks all wrong,"
It looks all wrong,
she muttered.
she muttered.
Glancing up,
Glancing up,
Mary saw a beautiful woman strolling past.
Mary saw a beautiful woman strolling past,
Surrounded by an admiring group of army officers.
beautiful, surrounded by amazing group of army officers.
"Mother!"
Mother,
cried Mary.
cried Mary.
She rushed forward,
She rushed forward,
but Mrs. Lennox brushed her daughter away,
but Mr. Lennox brushed her daughter away,
as she always did.
as she always did.
It was Mary's last glimpse of her mother.
It was Mary's last glimpse of her mother.
Over the next few days, a terrible fever,
Over the next few days, a terrible fever,
cholera,
cholera,
swept through her parents' house.
swept through her parents' house.
Her mother and father died,
Her mother and father died,
along with many of their servants.
along with many of servants.
Mary,
Mary
tucked away in the nursery,
stood away in the nursery,
never caught the cholera,
never caught the cholera,
but she was left all alone in the world.
but she was left all alone in the world.
After that,
After that,
Mary was passed around like a package between her parents' friends.
Mary was passed around like a packet between her parents' friends
Until a letter came from her uncle,
until a letter came from her uncle,
Mr. Craven.
Mr. Craven.
Misselthwaite Manor, Yorkshire, England. Dear Mary,
Dear Mary,
I have made arrangements for you to come to England and live at Misselthwaite Manor.
I have made agreement for you to come to England and live at Misselthwaite Manor.
My housekeeper, Mrs. Medlock, will
My housekeeper, Mr. Mellock,
meet you in London and escort you here.
will meet you in London and escort you here.
I'm afraid I won't see you for some time, as I have to travel to Europe on business.
I'm afraid I won't see you for some time as I have to travel to Europe on business.
Yours sincerely,
Yours sincerely,
Archibald Craven.
Archibald Craven.
No one cares what I want,
No one cares what I want,
Mary thought,
Mary thought,
but she had nowhere else to go.
but she had nowhere else to go.
Chapter 2. The Strange House.
Chapter 2. The Strange House.
Several weeks later, Mary was sitting in a cold carriage.
7 weeks later, Mary was sitting in a cold carriage
opposite the stern-looking Mrs. Medlock.
opposite the stern-looking Mr. Mellock.
What's that whooshing noise?
What's that whooshing noise?
Mary asked
as
they drove across a bleak landscape. It's the wind howling across the moor.
It's the wind howling across the moor.
Mrs. Medlock replied.
Mr. Medlock replied.
What's a moor?
What a moor?
asked Mary. Miles of empty land.
Miles of empty land.
And the manor is right in the middle of it.
And the manor is right in the middle of it.
I hate it already. Thought Mary. How many servants will I have?
How many servants will I have?
She asked.
Mrs.
Medlock looked shocked.
Mr. Medlock looked shocked.
I don't know how it was in India.
I don't know how it was in India,
she
said.
But here, you'll take care of yourself. They arrived late at night. Mrs. Medlock marched Mary across a huge hall.
Mr. Medlock marched Mary across a huge hall.
Up steep stairs and along twisting corridors. Your bedroom, she announced. At last, flinging open the door. You must stay here. Unless you're going outside. On no account must you go poking about the house. As soon as Mary stepped into the room, Mrs. Medlock shut the door and hurried off.
Mr. Medlock shut the door and hurried up.
Mary looked around. It was not a child's room. Tapestries hung on the walls and in the middle.
Tables hung on the wall and in the middle. Goodbye.